Hello, everybody. This is the old Henderson Real News Show. Organize, don't criticize. We're back again, folks, and this is our wonderful time, 2024. A wonderful year, ladies and gentlemen, and your future is determined by what you do this year, 2024. And that's why throughout this season, I will be talking to you about organizing and not criticizing the human enemies of mankind. We have found through research and observation that people don't prosper. They're sitting around criticizing others and not doing anything for themselves. Those people that do this usually want the government to do something for them, so they just wait for a handout and praise from the government, and that is not going to happen. So when you praise your government, ladies and gentlemen, you can expect nothing significant because they know you are not going to do anything but depend on them. And whenever you depend on the government, all they will do is keep you alive. And that's why I will be talking today about 3 different topics and give some analysis on the end so you can see what you must do in order to have what I call a salvation plan on earth. Most times you find that you have been told that you are all right as long as you prepare for the afterlife. I tell you that is bad teaching, ladies and gentlemen. You're only okay if you're prepared for this life, for yourself, for your family, and your community. And that's why you will have these topics to consider today. Mississippi legislature and some of their actions. We will talk about the Pope, the Catholic Pope, and his un-African endorsements. We will also talk about how one of your favorite countries, the nation of Russia, is courting those Africans. They are courting those Africans just like they are new brides. Folks, we're going to talk about that. And then we will end with economic solutions that can help you prepare this salvation plan while you're on earth. So that's what we're going to do, folks. And I know you want to know more about who is underwriting this show. I can tell you now, it's the Action Leadership Institute. This is a company that's located in Jackson, Mississippi, and they are doing certain things. They do a lot of workshops and seminars, and one of the real popular seminars they're doing at Action Leadership Institute is the 30, 60, 90-day success plan for individuals and families. Think about it. Guaranteed 30-day success plan. And if you learn these concepts, you will never have to worry about your economic position in this world. The next one is the Action Leadership Institute is a company that gives scholarships. Tell you where you can find over 600,000 scholarships, and they have over $1 billion available for young people that want to attend college, universities, those that are already in high school, starting off as juniors, seniors. And we have those scholarships that are available for all kinds of students. You don't have to be what we call a high performer or be a better student. You can just be a good student with potential and have skills in something other than nothing. You heard that? You don't hear that too often. Have skills in something other than nothing, and you probably qualify for a scholarship, at least a partial scholarship. Anytime there are over 600,000 scholarships available, you should qualify for one or another if you have a high school diploma. You can also go to Action Leadership Institute, and you will see that they will start teaching you how to do that 501c3 application so you can get your business started and get that grant application prepared so you can have the ability to get grants. And they also would teach you how to write your own grant if you prefer to use your skills versus pay someone $3,000 to $5,000 to write a grant for you, because they give a lot of grant writing workshops, usually one per month on the basis of request. They will do a workshop with 3 to 100 people anytime you call in advance, And if you want to get in touch with Action Leadership Institute, all you have to do is call 601-201-1957, or you can email them at clu369@gmail.com. And of course, they also work hard and long with a public speaking series where they travel around the country and talk about education, politics, economic development, investment auctions, and insurance. That's all you need in life, folks. All you need is education, economic development, know something about politics, and have the right to invest and get proper insurance so you can be a real citizen, a real American, and a people or persons that's going to be worldwide in your thinking. So again, if you want to hear and help yourself, call Action Leadership Institute at 601-201-1957, and you can get involved in some of those workshops and seminars. Many of them on Zoom. Since we are located in Jackson, Mississippi, we also have on-site seminars and workshops. So call us and see what's going on. Now let's look at what's happening in Mississippi. All of you know that the Mississippi legislature started working January the 3rd, just a few days ago, and they are very keen on certain issues this time. The citizens are going to have to be aware that the legislature is a hard-working institution in Mississippi. They have plans. They've been planning for years to do certain things, and at this point, they will have already put together some what I call talking points and legislation that is going to be in the following area. They will be debating tax cuts. They want to do some cuts in state income tax. Now, if you cut the state income tax, ladies and gentlemen, the governor and others will tell you that they must get money from someplace. So where that money coming from? That's billions of dollars, billions of state income tax money. So if that is eliminated, guess where your money is going to come from? The citizens. There are going to be more fees attached to food, clothing, shelter, entertainment, and other fees on what I call tax and so forth, property taxes, all kinds of things. But of course, they are not going to put emphasis on that. Anytime you have tax cut for what we call state income, that is a good thing for government officials, especially those that elected and appointed, because when you have more money available through tax cuts, it's a good possibility that the people that help get those tax cuts passed will receive some of the funds from those big income generated individuals and companies. We know that doesn't happen too often, but it does happen in some occasions. Now you see I'm slightly smiling here. Believe what you want. The other one is school vouchers. The state legislature, Mississippi legislature, has been saying that we want to support students attending private schools with public monies. And we've been campaigning on this issue from time to time, but the current governor, Tate Reeves, didn't talk about it too much this year because it's a foregone conclusion that he is going to support school vouchers, and that is going to help students that are attending private schools. Most of you know that a lot of folks in the states, various states, north, south, east, and west, don't put a lot of emphasis these days on public education because they say the education systems publicly are not doing very well, not helping the students, because they are too general. And the private tiers, and those what I'm calling the private tiers, say let's get this public money we're giving to the public schools, let's give it to the private schools, parochial schools, charter schools, anywhere but public schools, because they are not doing anything with that money. And that is not true, but you know that's what you do. When you want to change things so you can control more, you just take it away from the people that need it and give it to those that don't. Most people that have the ability to send their children to private schools are already doing it. But the governor and his people say, well, we know there are others that can't afford it. Their children should have the same right. So that is something you have to consider. You will either support this through your legislators or you will oppose it. You decide, Mississippians and others in other states. The next thing that is very important that the legislature will be addressing in Mississippi is restoring the ballot initiatives. They want to find ways for citizens to place issues directly on the ballot. This is not a new effort. This has been addressed by the state Supreme Court, and the legislature is probably going to figure out a way where you can find the citizen placing issues directly on a statewide ballot. So that will be a hard task, folks, hard task, because usually when a legislative branch passes a bill, they want to have a lot of oversight. So they will work it out because it is possible. It has been done in the past, and a lot of states are doing this. You can get a ballot directly on that statewide voting pattern, so you can vote without going through the legislature. Then they would address it and make it law. And the last thing we want to address here for your purpose is that the Mississippi legislature is concerned about addressing what we call the health care crisis in Mississippi. That's one of the major items on the legislative agenda. And they want to say it's significant to address this issue, but they don't want to do it in a way that is going to help a lot of people. They are saying we have a strong surge in possible hospital closing in some of the poor counties. So we are not going to help with insurance. We don't want to do the Affordable Care Act insurance, which 40 other states are going, but we are still going to address the Mississippi health care crisis. Are they going to continue to allow the hospitals to close or have them significantly cutting back on some of their health services? I will say they will have them to significantly cut their services because they're not going to have the money. And as they cut out so many departments, you find that's going to determine whether that rural hospital is going to close. They must get funds, and sooner or later they will start closing. And when people start dying in large numbers, things will change. It either takes death or someone losing a lot of funds for some states to change laws when the people suffer. You determine what they do, ladies and gentlemen. So let's keep that in mind. If you're a citizen of any state, and I know you are, you need to look at what your state legislature is proposing, and you, your family, and your community organizations should get together, review what is going on, and support those folks, or oppose what it's doing. And if it's not doing the right thing, you need to get with your elected and appointed delegation and go and propose laws through them and let them sponsor things that you want, versus sitting at home criticizing your government, the legislators, and all the others that are spending your money. Keep in mind, folks, these people work for you. You don't work for them. You pay their salaries. But we know that a lot of you think that your input is not important. That's why a lot of you all are suffering, ladies and gentlemen. You're suffering because you allow your elected officials, people that you hire and pay a salary, do whatever they want, and you don't think you have a power to change it. And if you continue to think that way, your legislators will be getting more and more power. You will have less power, and when you know anything, you will be addressing the topic that I'm going to talk about later on. You'll be addressing deals where it's going to be significant for you to be prepared for some major changes in your life. I call it the relocation news. You know what I'm talking about. But the last important issue, and this on the international level, is that there's a lot of commotion going on in Africa with the Pope. The Pope is what we call is acting on his un-African endorsement. The African leaders are saying the Pope has made them angry because he declares that you should bless same-sex couples that are marrying in Africa. And most of the African folks say homosexuality is un-African. Now, I want to know if there are any homosexuals in Africa. I'm just asking that question. But it is un-African, according to some of the leaders. And the man is saying, I'm talking about the Pope Francis, he is saying, all I want to do is just pass a little piece of legislation or give my blessing to same-sex couples. And the bishops in Africa protested, and this is one of the fastest growing Catholic regions in the world. But he says, all the great leaders say homosexuality is un-African. I don't know whether to believe that or not. Is it, folks? You all know. A lot of you live in Africa, been visiting from time to time. And the African leaders are so concerned about the Pope until they are calling for his resignation. And they have another group over there called the Anglican Church. And this church is a Christian group. And they are also endorsing the fact that homosexuals should be blessed. And some are saying, some of these top leaders are saying they need to have state-endorsed marriages. That is another factor. People always talking about certain things in public and doing some of the same things they are talking about in private. So if there are no homosexuals in Africa with that many billion people, a billion people, that must be a God country. I call it a God country. So let's just look at these kind of things. And you can always find that there's one question to ask these leaders in Africa and all over the world. Do you allow man, the state, or the individual to determine what is a sin? Should it come from the church? Should the sin be denoted by the state? Or should the individual decide what is a sin? There are a lot of them, thousands of them. Are you committing any sins? Are you supporting and endorsing any sins? We all support the sins we like, or the sins we love, or the sins we like to endorse and endure and participate in, but all the other sins that people are doing, we are against it. I hope that's not what's happening against those great leaders in Africa and many in Americans. On the same vein, they say certain people shouldn't get certain rights. In America and many parts of Europe, they're usually talking about something similar when you start putting emphasis on what immigrants ought to get, what blacks ought to get, what people of color ought to get. Should they get the same thing as other citizens in Europe, in Asia, in America? Should they have the same rights? So I'm going to tell you, folks, that's for you to decide. So when you start looking at what's going on, you have to understand that there's going to be some major changes if you don't get involved. And for the last 6 months now, I've been talking about something that people are saying shouldn't be discussed. And since I know what is going to happen in the next 9 months in the world, as far as my favorite topic is World War III, Part 1. Folks, you don't want to believe it, but it's already upon us. And that's why you must get prepared to protect yourself, your family, and your community. And we are going to address that, not today, but I'm just going to give you some of the alarming facts one more time. And we will be talking about this from time to time so you can get ready to be prepared to help yourself before the government moves in and start relocating you and putting you in a so-called safe zone. No such thing as a safe zone when you're in a war situation. And those that are not prepared are usually the ones that's going to be relocated. They are going to be moved by the government, not the rich, not those that have good jobs, unless they are in the opposition. So, folks, that's why it's involved. We call it involvement. Get involved in politics, in economic development. Work with your leaders in the churches, your elected and appointed officials, and let them know what you want. And when you start sitting around just waiting for things to happen, I'm telling you now, folks, these politicians, and they're definitely going to be supported by the religious leaders and the industrial rulers, they are definitely will put you in a position where they will kill you. They will take your land. They will take your minerals. And then all of those that they can't find something to take, if you oppose them, they will then enslave you and put you in a relocation camp. Some of you don't believe it, but it's happening throughout the world. Look at the Middle East now, where they are having some hard times economically, politically, and socially. And we're going to talk about that when I come back from the break. I'll be talking about the Middle East crisis and how this is leading to what I call World War III Part 1 and possibly Part 2. So stay tuned. And just before I leave, I want you to call a few of your friends and relatives and say you need to get over there to WeBelieveDigital.com and listen to the Al Henderson Real News Show, because he's going to be telling us about World War III Part 1, possibly Part 2, and it is going to be different. We have to prepare ourselves. So until we return in a minute and a half, I want you to stay tuned, get you another cup of coffee, get those folks out of the back room and have them to listen to this show. Good news is always good news, folks. Stay tuned. We'll be back in 45 seconds.
Have you had your Earthblend coffee today? At Earthblend Coffee, we take pride in offering you the very best of beans across the world, blended and roasted to perfection, giving you superior quality and satisfying and flavorful taste. Experience the world in one cup with Earthblend Coffee. To order, visit earthblendcoffee.co now.
SocratesGarrettENT.com is a diversified firm specializing in recycled aggregates and crushed concrete. SocratesGarrettENT.com's recycled materials provide the construction industry with significant economic and environmental benefits by recycling clean concrete rubble into MDOT grade rock materials. Recycled aggregates and crushed concrete can be applied to driveways, road construction, bank protection, parking lots, general bulk fills, and more. For more information, please call 601-896-0084 or visit us online at SocratesGarrettENT.com.
Okay, thank you, viewers and listeners, for staying tuned to the Al Henderson Real News Show. Organize, don't criticize. This is our second show in 2024, and I want you to always remember that we are moving in the right direction here. We're going to do what we can to get everything centered so you can understand that life is a centering concept. We call it centering, where you move in the right direction and you focus on something that's going to keep you in a position where you're able to survive without depending on others. And that's what they're trying to do in the Middle East. The bad news is that some people can't survive because they are killing folks by the thousands. According to our information, we just did some research today and find that over 1,000 children have been killed, many losing one and two legs, arms, and all kinds of things. So they will be what I call people on the society book for the rest of their lives. They're going to be hostile and mean. Their family, friends, and relatives going to be fighters in the future. And that's why I'm telling you, World War III Part 1 has already started, because you will find that some of the countries in the Middle East, some are getting serious. And I'm just going to name a few. You find that some of these folks are getting so aggressive, such as the Yemens, Iraq, Lebanon, and some of those others over there in Iran. They're getting so serious. until they got a lot of people thinking about nuclear war. We called it limited nuclear war. That's what I call World War III Part 2. World War III Part 1 is already upon us. And when you find that this war is already moving into about 13 different countries where people are paid to fight by their governments, and we know the United States is involved. They have big ships in that area. Some just left last week. I understand others are on the way. And they have insurgents in those countries, have the CIA and many others are there doing their job. They're supposed to walk around, observe, find out who the bad boys are, target them for assassination so they can put a drone on them and blow them up. That's what countries do. All of them do that, including the friendly countries. The friendly countries are always spying on each other, and they know that. Communication systems are so accurate these days, all the countries know who is spying on them, when they do it, what information they have on them, and they try to change codes and change whatever they are doing, move things around, lie with each other, and just say, we are your friend. But at the same time, they are causing trouble. So these wars are not going to stay in the boundaries because people on all sides, both sides, the West, those in Europe, those over there in what I call the Middle Eastern region, are engaging in targeted killing. They are looking at their enemies. Right now in the Middle East, this targeted killing is one-sided. And that's because the people that have the less resources or fewer resources are on the move now, and that's why you find their allies will be picking up the what I call the heavy lifting, the more hard-working deals where they will be targeting their killing. They will be targeting their killing in other countries, other cities, other schools, other political, what I call places of meetings. It is going to happen. These political institutions are going to be attacked, and they are planning this, folks. We read about it. We are doing the research, and some of you are going to be mighty surprised when it hits in your country. Now let's look at what we are doing here. Let's look at what we are doing. I want you to think about your good comrades that are pretending they love everybody in the world, especially the Africans. And I mentioned Africa and the Pope earlier, where they are telling you that you need to do what we say. The Pope is always giving what we call his biblical directions to his insurgents, those that are with him and against him. He is nothing but a man that has a nation. He's just like a president of a country. He has his own army, his own money, his own state, his own ambassadors. And those folks have been listening to the Pope for many centuries. They have a strong backing in Europe, in Asia, Africa, Latin America, and many other places. And since you find a backing that is religious in scope, a lot of people believe everything they hear when religious people start talking. Now let's look at what the Russians are doing. I told you before that the Russians are what we call courting Africa. They love them. They love those Africans right now. And I'm talking about how the Africans are getting in a position, and many know it because we have done the research, and others are saying it's a good thing. The Russians are saying we are going to further enslave Africans by our educational strategies. That sounds good, doesn't it? The Russians are telling the Africans, directly and indirectly, and they are supporting this, say we are going to enslave you through education. It's a great thing. And this is what's happening in Africa. China is doing the same thing. They have something called education centers in Africa that is sponsored by the Russians, where they recruit hundreds of young Africans to the Russian language and culture program across the continent. And they are getting more and more thousands of young Africans in these classes where they learn the Russian language and the culture programs. And they are so good at this thing, they are offering it online and in person. They have opened up what we call, or what they call, open education centers. And this is going to be launched at a lot of sites in over half of the countries in Africa right now. You can go in person or you can do it online. Learn the African language and the African culture. In just a few minutes, you will find that they looked at one of the largest countries in Africa, that's Kenya. The Russian classes there were unveiled last year, and they got them there by the thousands. These classes are free, ladies and gentlemen, and when you have free classes in an area where they don't have much education, people are going to take advantage of it when it's going to be put off at your doorstep. So they are learning the Russian language, and they are getting ready to offer Russians opportunities for Africans to go to the Russian universities and colleges. They have decided that we're going to have 4 to 5 to 10,000 Africans in Russian colleges and universities on the main line. When you go to the main line, university and college, you are then, folks, being what I call trained to be an insurgent in your own company. You're going to be told that you are better than the people at your homeland or in your homeland. You will have a tendency to be propped up later on as leaders in the military, in the government, in the church, and other places, because you will be taught that your way is not the best way. So look at this deal here. They have these open education centers in Egypt, Zimbabwe, Uganda, Ethiopia, Tanzania, Tunisia, and the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and many others. They are doing it the right way. They are getting these leaders together, and they are putting together memorandums of understanding and have these Africans that sign these things. And they are saying right now, we are in 28 different African countries. That's what the Russians are saying. The literature is there. The research is there. Check it out, ladies and gentlemen. And they are proclaiming that these courses have been a great success. That's what the Russian ambassador is saying. And Putin is saying, we're going to just ask the Africans to give us just a little opportunity to trade with them, provide security there, and to receive more of our diplomats. And we're going to allow the Africans to use our private military service. They have a group called the Wagner Group, the military Wagner Group. That's a private military group sponsored by the Russians. They are in Africa, especially in Central African Republic and some of the other countries. And they are doing this so they won't pretend that they are in their country as a Russian military. But you know how you can comply with your friends and have people put together what we call sponsored military regimes that's paid for by the government, and they can do all kinds of things. And very seldom are they punished when they kill civilians. They are there to be able to take over. And when you know anything, when the Russians, the Chinese, and others get through with those Africans, those in Latin America, and others, they're going to take over those countries again and install their own leaders and advisors. Right now, they are controlling the country's economic systems, all the economic systems in Africa. They have all the minerals. All the big leaders are sponsored by the Russians, the United States governments, or the Chinese, and a few other European countries. They are all being dictated to by those big countries I just mentioned. the United States, Russian, Chinese, and North Korea. They're all working together indirectly for the same allegiance. They want the Africans, those in the Middle East, those in Latin America and others to do their best to be subservient to us. We're talking about the Western powers, the Eastern powers. We're talking about the Europeans, especially the Russians. They are saying we are going to dominate and we will raise no barrier that we can't oversee. Say we can oversee everything we do because we plan for the future. We are seeing during the present what we are going to do in the future. So if you want to get something going, you train the people in your culture, teach them your language, and of course, smart people that do that going to tell you just the reverse. You learned what I have because yours is not good enough. And that's where you create a situation where the nation that is being helped will be hurting itself at the same time. So keep in mind, folks, you want to know what is happening. And I'm telling you again that it's serious out here in America, in the world. And I don't want to have you believing that you don't have a chance for survival. You do. But if you don't, look at what is happening in your state legislatures, in your national government arena, and with all the allies that they work with. They have one thing in common, and that is to make you an economic, political, and social slave to their agenda. And in the end, you are going to be fighting the wars. You are going to be the one that's relocated. You are going to be the one that's suffering tremendously. And you are going to be the one that die. And I'm telling you right now, you find that the Russians and the Chinese are competing in these areas for training and educating. The Russians got a deal similar to the Chinese have a deal similar to the Russians. They call there the Confucian Institute. You've heard of Confucius. He's a great Chinese leader. They got something called the Confucius Institute, and they are doing the same thing in Africa, Asia, Latin America. And I'm just waiting for the insurgents that are already here from China and Russia to start offering free college and university courses in Chinese, in Russian, and do the cultural aspect too. You're going to have it. These big colleges, many of them lean towards these dictatorships. And just in a few years, you're going to have these colleges and universities, those that are what I call on the left, teaching Chinese, that's sponsored by the Chinese and the Russian leaders, that's going to be free to the students. Of course, they offer these foreign languages right now in these colleges, in these big colleges and universities, for the elite students, but they are going to give it to the masses. That is the new thing. And just wonder when it's going to get to the black colleges and universities. Now, they are not going to allow the black colleges and universities to offer these free courses in Chinese and Russian. That's going to have to be a move by the legislature to do that. And I guarantee you that's not going to happen. But these big universities, like Harvard, Yale, Princeton, universities in Michigan and other states, the great Ohio State University, and many others. And you know, the South then will gradually start doing this after about 10 or 15 years. We always a little late, but old California, the great state of California, going to be spearheading this kind of stuff. So when you find that, folks, you better get ready for some bad things to happen to you, because if you don't, you're not going to be able to survive. And that's why the last part of this show, we only have about 4 minutes left, is I will be telling you how you must prepare yourself, because there's a solution to everything. If you have yourself well grounded, ladies and gentlemen, well grounded, economically, politically, and socially, you will be able to withstand some of these government intrusions that will take over your life. First, you have to declare that you are going to dominate any area where you're in the majority, that you're going to control economic development, education and training, principles of leadership, and politics and religion in your area where you're in the majority. That's the first thing you're going to do. You can start that. You don't need a lot of resources to do it. You just need to congregate where you are, pool your resources, and then do what the Russians and the Chinese are doing. You have to provide something for the people. And this is what you can do, ladies and gentlemen, starting with your churches and community organizations. You can recruit, select, train, and appoint your young people to these areas of activity that I just mentioned, to your education and training institution, as leaders in your churches, as leaders with your politicians, elected and appointed, as leaders in the industrial military complex. These young folks can and will be trained, and you'll be able to then to have some intervention when the people start retiring and dying out. Your systems will change then. It'll be more people-friendly than it is today. Now, a lot of you don't believe it, but what you must do, though, once you get yourselves organized politically, you need to start getting some economic power. And I've been telling you for years now, if you want to get some economic power when you are poor, when you don't have a lot of resources, and I've been told that it's not a good idea, but I know from experience, I've known a lot of people to use this strategy, and they have a strong economic portfolio, and they can sleep good at night. So I tell poor people that don't think they can do anything that you need to purchase all the land you can in rural areas and inner cities, 2 acres at a time or more. Every rundown house you find in the city, every pieces of land that's available in the rural area, at least 15 to 30 miles from town, buy that land. That's money in the bank. That's what we call the income that you could get when you're asleep. Because if you own some rural areas, some land in the rural area, there's 3 things you can do with it. 1, you can rent it, you can lease it, and you can sell some and buy others. That's what people do. That's the way to build those funds, folks. And then you can move into the suburbs and buy those land pieces. You could then move into the cities and buy what we call an industrial complex, buy apartment complex. And with your people already trained, they will be on the various commissions and boards of control, and they can direct policies and legislation in your favor. That's the first thing. You got to own something. The next you're going to do is invest in the goods and services of what we call the military complex industry, airplanes, communication systems. You're looking at food and utility companies. You're going to look at government bonds and all of these kinds of things, airplane industries. That's where you're going to buy your stock. When you start selling and leasing your land and have all this money that you can get from rent, you can start investing your money. And the next thing you want to make sure your family is secure, and we're about to end now, ladies and gentlemen, is that you want to get that will together. That will, that long-term health care initiative, and proper insurance. Most of you don't believe in these things, especially most of the black folks. Most people will find, if you do the research, 87% of black people in the world don't have their wills and their proper insurance and investments and their health care directives together. 87%. Worldwide. A lot of people don't believe it. Some say, well, I'm too poor to have a will, to have a burial policy. No, you're not, folks. You don't want the state to take over you, do you? They'll take you and bury you and won't about to know anything about it. So you need to look out for yourself. And I'm going to conclude by saying, in order to not criticize folks, you're going to have to start developing a small business that's based on your skill level. Folks, you've got to get in a position where you work for yourself, at least starting off part-time while you're working for others, while you're buying this land in the rural areas and in these inner cities. Some people say, what do I want land in the inner city for? I'm going to tell you, that's the diamond in the rough. Anyone that owns 30 or 40 old regular houses in any inner city, if they can live for 10 or 15 years, if they bought that land, that lot, for $500 or $1,000, in 10 to 15 years, that thing, same spot, going to cost $150,000 to $250,000 or more per lot, because things are changing, folks, and you want to be part of the change. So don't worry about what you own. Just try to own something somewhere. And I'm going to conclude again by saying I want to thank you for listening to the Eldridge Henderson Real News Show. I know from time to time you're going to hear some repeats, and that's what people do. It's just like a good music item that you hear. You hear the same thing several times. You hear a melody, then you hear a verse or two, and you hear another chord, and before it ends, you hear the same thing 3 or 4 times. And you remember those songs, not even knowing you remember it. And that's what I do in these presentations that I give. I'm not here jumping and shouting and hollering and squalling and telling you you're not going to survive. I'm telling you in a very dull manner. Very dull. I don't get too excited. I have to be calm and tell you you shouldn't be happy with your performance. You shouldn't allow people to take advantage of you when you pay their salaries. First, do something for yourself, your family, and then get out there and serve in your community. So until next week, folks, I want you to remember, if you want to hear more about Action Leadership Institute and what they sponsor, you call the direct line, 601-201-1957, or email those folks at clu369@gmail.com. Until next week, I want to say goodbye, and always remember, organize, don't criticize. Look out for yourself first, your family second, and your community third. And you wouldn't have to worry about living and dying in a relocation camp, because World War III Part 1 is on you, is definitely up on you, and you might find by the end of the year, World War III Part 1 and 2. And when that happens, if you don't have security, you're going to have to move. Until later, I want to say goodbye to all the viewers and listeners of the Eldridge Henderson Real News Show. Remember, before you leave, to always say, I'm going to organize and not criticize the human enemies of mankind, their relatives, and their financial supporters. See you next time.